Today, we're looking at a green ink from Kaio no Oto, Koke Iro. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so that if you are in a hurry, you can skip around. But if you got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram, and if you're new here, I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Platinum 3776 with a broad nib, wrote with it for a day, and used it to take the notes for this video. This first writing sample is done on a standardized set of paper of Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia. There are additional writing samples later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in something like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. Holy crap, look at the shading. Its shade is gorgeous. It's the camouflage shading that I love so much. Just look at this page for a moment, because I'm going to try not to dwell on this shading, but it might be difficult. Oh my goodness, because I like green inks and I like shading. Anyway, the extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and would you look at that shading? It is awesome. Light to dark to light to dark, dark to light to dark to light. It's like a Star Wars movie. 12 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and god-awful amounts of shading that are absolutely fantastic to look at. Oh, look at that. 17 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us tons of color variation, and we got tons. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and some shading. Not a ton of shading. It's sort of what the Tomoe River does sometimes. It's been more allowed to level out here. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does offer some nice shading. Like Quick goes from much lighter, works its way much darker all the way through. Brown starts much darker, works its way very gradually much lighter. So it's not the camouflage shading here that I love, but it is a very nice gradual shading. And 6 seconds to dry. 6 seconds. 16 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub. With no feather, spread, halo, sheen, the shade comes through better. Look it over. Light to dark. Brown, dark to light. Very nice. 24 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both don't really show us a lot of color variation, although we got pretty good color variation in the medium. Welcome back, shading. We're on to Rhodia with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and some nice shading. Look at what's going on. Look at how different the tones are in the Kaio to the Oto. Very nice. The very beginning. Okay, I had to double check my pronunciation. The Koke Iro. The beginning to the K, very different tones. And from the K to the O, very different tones. Very nice shading. Extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and camouflage shading. It is fan-freaking-tastic. Quick starts much lighter, works its way darker, gets light spots, dark spots. So nice. 13 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine. No feather, spread, halo, sheen, very nice shading. Over starts darker, gets lighter, gets darker. Who could ask for more? Brown starts darker, gets lighter, gets darker again at the end. 19 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both do show plenty of color variation, and we do get plenty of color variation. Although I think it's looked best so far on the Clairfontaine. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies.
The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And it's very interesting because you see this minty green that's there pushing up. We see the yellow, and then we see this brownish color up at the very top. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and I don't believe that there's any brownish tone in this. What I believed is what appeared to be kind of a brownish tone was how some of that green was mixing. Either that or it is totally stayed behind in that line across the bottom. The yellow, as it moved up almost as a uniform color all the way up this filter paper.
Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it.
Looking at the highlighter, it didn't handle itself very well. It really did get a bit blown out, especially the G and the H. I wouldn't use it in a note-taking situation, but only if I'm going to go back and highlight. If I'm not highlighting, I'm using it because this ink, gorgeous. Water is lifting some of this ink up off the page. It's not doing as much as I would hope for. That's got a lot to do with that second chromatography, that green that was left behind. We're definitely seeing that here on this paper. Now, pen flush is doing a bit more than what water did. It's really starting to break the ink down. You can see on the right side of the pen flush some of the white of the paper starting to come through, which means that more than 30 seconds and half an ounce of elbow grease pen flush is all that you should need. For those that don't want to use any kind of elbow grease, 1/3 bleach solution into and out of the pen will completely obliterate this ink. Just flush your pen with water afterwards.
I test viscosity or flow with a tilt test that I'll link the video on how I do that. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9.
Kyono Oto's Koke Iro has a viscosity of 3.25, making this a drier ink.
To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples. Now, for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds.
Kyono Oto's Koke Iro has an average dry time of 17 seconds, making it not just normal, but average. Instead of finding inks that look like Kyono Oto's Koke Iro, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. Now, such a great color made me want to put a nice vibrant purple with it. So I chose Diamine's Imperial Purple. The second writing sample is done on Levenger, Hazel, and White Lines paper. Here we're looking at Levenger notebook papers, and the only problem I have with that paper is the thin lines. Otherwise, it performs so well. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some shading. Like, look at the Oto, goes lighter to darker to lighter. Nice. Extra fine is about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some shading. And it's interesting shading at that. When you look at the word jumps, it's lighter at the bottoms of these letters, but darker at the tops of the... So it's like it's lighter down here, but darker up. It's very weird how it did that, and looks amazing. Over goes from lighter to darker, the lighter to darker. Beautiful, 7 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, great, great shading. Over goes from lighter to darker, the darker to lighter. Brown goes darker to lighter to mid-tone to darker again. Beautiful stuff, and 10 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows a whole lot more color variation than the medium did, although we get perfectly good color variation all the way through. Here we have the Hazel notebooks. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some very nice shading. Look at what's going on with Quick. Starts lighter, gets darker. Or sorry, the goes lighter to darker. Quick also goes lighter to darker. Brown goes darker to lighter. Fox, lighter to darker. Nice. 2 seconds to dry. In a pocket carry-around notebook, that's amazing. 2 seconds to dry. Medium is the darkest tone on the page. No feather spread, halo sheen. There's spots of lighter shade, and that's about it. The very beginning of the D in dog, the end of dry. There's not a lot though, otherwise it's a fairly uniform tone, 4 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both. The extra fine shows plenty of color variation left to right. There's some up here. It's not incredible, but there is some. The medium shows none, and there really is none. How about white lines? No bleeding. I only have to do this when I give myself the notes of there's a fair amount of ghosting, but I don't think it would stop you from using the back of the page. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no real shading. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 5 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, a lot, and a little darker than the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it, and that is all that I have for the writing sample.
So what do I think of Kayono Oto's Koke Iro? This is a very interesting bright green. It's almost neon in how it looks. It has real personality, real decent shading. Normally I wouldn't go for a neon kind of ink. I wouldn't use it for a daily writing, filling up pages. It's quite hard to see in that. However, using it to go back into your notes and annotate things that you need to add in or go look up, this is fantastic for drawing your attention to that place. So what nib and flow are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? No matter what pen you use, it's got a very unique personality that goes down on the page. The only thing I would say is avoid wet stubs. It just looked gross there. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching.